Hi, I'm David Bakker and today we'll be making this, a draailampje. Now it's off, turn it around and now it's on. This is my invention. I make these things and I sell these things and I named them draailampje, which is a Dutch word. Draai means something like turn and lampje means light, so turn it around and it's on, turn it around and it's off. Now there's a little battery in here and this draailampje lasts for 5 days and 5 nights and then it slowly starts to fade. But put a new little battery in there and it'll last for another 100+ hours or so. Today we'll be making one of these things and it takes you about, well, 10, 20 or 30 minutes depending how good you are with a soldering iron. To make this draailampje you need some very basic tools. You'll need something like a wire cutter or a pair of pliers with a built-in wire cutter in there. That's what I'm using. A little knife is very useful. Of course you'll need your soldering iron and you need a little soldering tin. These are the tools you need, and optionally you could use a lighter. That could be useful somewhere in this process, using a lighter. And this stuff. This is gum used to attach posters to the wall, but it's really useful to hold your soldering stuff. So that's another optional tool there as well. It could be very useful, and that's all for making one of these draailampjes. So that's what you need, but of course you need the parts as well. The parts to make this, I sell them online and you receive them like this, including the little jar. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it easy in this video, take it slow, so you can just follow along and make your own little draailampje. All instructions are also available on my website in a PDF form, and I think I'll put them up on Instructables as well, so you can have a look there too, but I think the video is easiest just to follow along. Right, in order to make the draailampje, we need to prepare our components and have a look at the components we need, the parts we need here. So open this up. In here are, of course, the jar itself, the draailampje. There's a little note in here with a link to the instructional video, but you're watching that right here, and a link to the PDF on the website. You can have a look at that as well. Then there's the light itself, a 10mm LED light. There's the battery. It's a CR2032 battery. The battery holder for the CR2032. And then there's probably the most important part, and that's this one. And this is a tilt or angle switch. And if you shake it, you hear the shaking of 2 little metal balls that are in there and that control whether it's up and down and where it's on or off. And there's a little piece of tape in here so you can affix the whole circuit to the lid of the little jar. So that's all the parts we have here. And let's start by making sure that the LED and the battery, that they both work. So I'll grab the LED. It's a 10mm white LED, and there is the CR2032 battery. Now in order to test whether this works, you need to connect these leads from the LED to the battery. So just connect them, and if they don't work, that's probably because you did it the wrong way around, because the LED has a plus and a minus side. The long lead is always plus and the short one is always minus. And the battery here, it says plus on this side, so you need to have the plus lead on this side as well. Put it in like this and there you go, the LED works. So now we know it works, the battery works, the LED works, and we know which side of these 2 leads is plus and which one is minus. The long one is plus, the short one is minus. What we do to prepare it for putting it in the draailampje is splitting these 2 apart in a V shape. Just bend them in a V shape, and then this, the minus lead, just fold it in a little angle like this so we can recognize it, and we need this to solder it on a bit more easily. Alright, that's the LED prepared. Excellent. Next thing we're going to prepare is the battery holder like this. This is the CR2032 battery holder in here. Here you need to put the battery in like so, and then you can see underneath it has 2 little leads, and one of these 2 you don't need, and you don't need the plus one on the bottom. And if you have a look here, it says plus right here, so you follow this around, and you can follow, oh, this one must be the plus side of this battery holder. We don't need it, and I want to cut this part off. So I grab my pliers with built-in wire cutter, and here I just cut off that little piece from the battery holder. Now if you're going to cut, be sure to wear safety goggles, because this metal is going to go everywhere basically. Oh, it was alright. I snapped it off, and let's see if the camera can focus on this really small piece. As you can tell, it's not all the way away from the plastic. A little closer than this, a little more off the top would be better. There we go. Yeah, a little more, and that's good. It doesn't have to be all the way flat, it just doesn't need to be the highest point sticking out from the battery holder on the bottom. Now this other side, the minus side of the leads, this one needs to be folded flat. It needs to be just as flat as the rest of the battery holder, and it needs to point outwards like this. Now you can try and bend it with your finger like this, but that's quite hard. So what I do is I just put it here on the table and just gently push it down, and there you see it's going flat. If you have pliers anyway, you might as well use them to make this part all flat. See, that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's a bit flat like this. Alright, that's the battery holder all prepared. Well done. Now if you have a look at the completed draailampje, if you look on the inside, as you can tell, let the camera focus for a second, as you can tell right here, that's the LED, of course, the battery holder, and here is the tilt switch, this part here, and as you can tell, it's got plastic here, that's a blackish plastic, and this here is metal. Since it's soldered here, soldering is done with heat, and plastic doesn't do well with heat, so it melts and burns and it's all yucky, smoke comes off. So we need to clear a part of this plastic from the bottom side of the angle switch. As you can tell, this is one we have in our kit, and we need to clean it off. Half of it needs to be cleaned off, so it's metal exposed at the bottom like this. So that's what we need to do now. And for this you need a little knife. Let's grab my little knife here. Now you're working with a knife, and of course a knife can cut you, so be careful. What I'm going to do here is just make a little cut through the thin plastic all around the tilt angle switch. Just real careful. Go around once. You don't have to cut that deep, the plastic isn't that thick. Go around once, and now you could peel off this plastic. That's a bit of tedious work, and I make quick work of it by using a lighter. Now be careful, because if you're heating up this plastic like I'm doing like now, this is melting the plastic, making it nice and soft, and it burns it off right in the middle there. That's what I wanted. Now it just really easily comes off here. Now what I'm doing here is of course burning plastic, and that gives off all yucky poisonous fumes, so don't do this. And also the angle switch can become quite hot, so be very careful if you do this. Don't breathe it in, ventilate well, and don't burn your hands. Right, that's the angle switch with half of the plastic. Leave this part of the plastic on, the top part. Please leave that on, because this really holds it together on the top. If you remove this, it might fall off these two leads. Not always, but sometimes that does happen. Hey, I'm making a nice commercial for my favorite pens here. The Staedtler Permanent Lumacolor F. Those are the best pens in the world, if you happen to want to know. Best pens markers. Anyway, getting off the track. I wanted to tell you that one of these two leads from the angle switch you don't need. I want you to cut off one of these two. Which one? Well, I want you to cut off the left one. Which one? Well, I want you to cut off the left one of these two leads. And if you're thinking, well, which one is left? Well, that was just a little joke. It doesn't matter which one you cut off. Either one. Take either one of them and clip them off, but be careful to save the lead. You need that lead in a little second, so cut it off right here. There you go. So we need the lead itself is still here, we need that, and now the angle switch is prepared. Half of the plastic and one lead left. Perfect. Next step, we'll start soldering. If you look at the battery holder we have here, we have this minus lead. We need to make this a little longer in order to attach the LED later on. We need to make this a little longer, and we do that by putting this lead we cut off the angle switch and soldering this part on right here. This is what I want to do, just solder it on right there. Now a quick lesson in soldering. If you have two parts you want to solder, right here for example, then your soldering iron needs to connect to both parts of the metal, heat it up, and in, well, about a second both parts of metal are really hot. Then you push some soldering tin, you put some soldering tin in there, push it in, something like a centimeter or like half an inch or something, depending on how big your soldering point is. Then you leave the ironing tip, soldering iron tip on for a second longer. Why leave it on? Well, then the soldering tin really starts to flow and really connect with the metal. Then after a second of flowing, you remove the soldering iron and your two pieces of metal are joined. And it cools off really quite quickly. So that's basic soldering 101. Now if you start soldering, if you got your soldering iron right here, this tip needs to be very clean. If it's clean, it can transfer much more heat to whatever you're soldering. And cleaning it off, hopefully with your soldering iron you have something like this, like a messing thing to clean it off, or a sponge. Anything you can do, just it's a good use, a good habit to get into when you start soldering. Always just clean off the tip of your soldering iron. Now obviously this tip here needs to be quite hot. It's 380 degrees Celsius right now. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, you figure it out. It's really quite hot, so be careful, you can burn yourself. Now the hardest part in soldering to me is holding everything in place while you solder, and that's where this gum comes in place, the poster gum. What I do with poster gum is I put it here on my work desk, put the object in I want to solder, like so, and put the other part in I want to solder, like right here. Then I grab my soldering iron and my tin, soldering iron in my hand, and the other hand I have the soldering tin. Now I put the soldering iron tip right there on the two pieces of metal right there. Heat it up for about a second, push a little bit of soldering tin in there. There we go. Let it flow for a second and then release. Now don't breathe in these fumes that come off from it. You should ventilate quite well. This is poisonous. There's a little lead in here, so be careful with that stuff. Well, there you go. That's the first little soldering joint I made. Let's have a look. Well, it's not the prettiest in the world, but it'll do. It will do. Next step, put the battery in, and that is a very easy step, of course. You just grab the battery here and be sure to put the plus side here in the plus side of the battery holder, like so. Put the battery in, and then this lead, the minus lead right here, we just extended, fold that up. You need to fold that upwards like this. Just bend it like so, just bend it upwards. That here we have right there is perfect. Just that little line needs to be up there. Alright, the battery holder is prepared. Now, let's have a look again at the finished product. In the finished product, we have the angle switch is soldered onto the battery holder, and this here, soldering this part, the soldering iron, with the soldering iron right there, in that corner, soldering this bit, the battery holder, to the angle switch is the hardest part of this project. So let's get started. Again, I want to hold this right in place, so I'll put my little piece of gum right here on the table and put my battery holder right here. Now, if I put my angle switch on in an angle leaning backwards, then it's not going to work correctly. You want to solder it straight up as much as possible, and this corner here, that little corner on the battery holder right there, that is the spot to put it in, and that's the spot to solder. So I'm going to set it up with the gum here. I can just hold this Just put some gum around here, like so. Get that nice and straight. There we are. Yeah, that looks about right. About straight up. It's well attached, and now we need to solder this. And this is the hardest part of soldering we do in this project, because both parts need to be equally hot, but they're both different metals, so they heat up differently. They both need to be very, very hot in order for you to put the tin in there, and put enough tin in there so it really connects well. Now the easiest thing to do is to put the soldering iron here in this little corner right there. Lay it in here, heat it up well. You need to be, both pieces of metal need to be touching the soldering iron. Just really put it in there, heat it up quite well, then put a lot of solder in there. 1 centimeter or ½ inch is not enough. You probably need a little more than that, maybe even an inch of soldering tin, pushing it in there. Let it flow really nice, and when you see it flow, release, and then you're done. Don't release like this horizontally. Try to release like in a 45-degree angle going up, because then the soldering tin stays in that corner. You don't drag it along across the battery holder. Like I said, this is the hardest part, and let's see if we can make this work in one go. But it doesn't matter, you can always redo soldering, so don't worry. And there's nothing really that breaks here with heat, so you're fine. Easiest thing to put it here in the corner, then heat it up. I'm just going to put it away from the camera, so I have a bit more control in my hand. Now heat it up, heat it up, heat it up, heat it up, heat it up. When both parts are getting hot, put a little soldering tin in there, a little more. It needs to have quite a lot. Alright, that looks good. Now let it flow for a second. Flow, 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 and remove in a 45-degree angle. Again, ventilate well and do not breathe this smoke. Alright, I think this looks quite well. Now this part is still really quite hot because we just soldered this, so be careful you don't touch that by hand. I'm just going to remove this here, remove the gum. Now you see all this yucky gummy stuff still here from the gum. You can take that off just by using the gum. Just still hot, careful, but it's connected, looks well. Just dab, 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 dab. There we go. Clean. Alright, now the circuit is looking well. Now we have, we're getting somewhere. This here is the plus side, and that here, the up, is the minus side. And now you can test your circuit by grabbing the LED, and you know that this part with the angle, that bit here, is minus, and that one is plus. So if you connect them like these, it should start to work. Well, let me pick it up. Minus on the minus, plus on the plus. Hey, and then it doesn't work. Well, remember what we're building. We're building a draailampje, which has to be upside down in order to work. So this will never work. Now you have to turn it upside down and then connect the minus to the minus and the plus to the plus, and there we go. It works. Alright, excellent. So the next step, of course, is to solder this into place. And let's have a look again at the finished product. If you look at the finished product, it is nicest if the LED is right in the middle of the jar and not all the way to the bottom. So in order to do so is try to get this LED just slightly above the angle switch. Do not have too much space in here. It needs to be quite close to this, and of course it's nicest if it hangs right in the middle. So get it right in the middle and quite close down to the angle switch. First things first, let's bend this part, the extra lead from the angle switch. You can bend that inwards like so. Don't touch any other metal, otherwise it's going to make contact all the time. So bend this part in like so. Yeah, bend it in. And then we're going to solder this bit like this. That's what we're going to do, and I'm going to use that same gum again on the table in order to hold this all in place. Now I'm going to put this, maybe I can put it towards the camera so you can actually see. So what I want to do here is put this in the gum, the LED, and connect both parts here Let's see. And this is the harder part, is setting this up so it works correctly. Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, there, laid it out. Now we're going to solder 2 points. First I'm going to start by soldering up this little corner. Just put the soldering iron right in that corner, heat both parts up, add a little solder, soldering tin, release. Well, it looks fine. Side of this, heat up both parts, add a bit of soldering tin, press it down a little up. This gets hot, so don't do this. Do this with something else, not your finger, because it heats up, and then you burn your finger. But solder both parts onto the circuit right here, this intersection connection, and right there to both minus side from the LED and from the battery holder. And now it should be finished. Carefully remove it, because it sticks quite well, this stuff, and it would be a shame if you tear apart your circuit. And let's test it. Yay, it works. And if the angle is not correct, you can just bend it a little bit, that's fine. Yeah, looks great. Alright, now this lead here sticking out, you don't really need that, so we'll just remove that part. This extra leg here, we don't need it, so we'll just cut that off. And again, you're clipping some metal off, so close your eyes or wear safety goggles, that's even better. And there we are. Alright, looking good. This part, yes, working quite well. It looks quite in the middle, very good. Next step is, of course, putting it in the lid. Included in the kit is a piece of tape foam, double-sided tape foam, and it's protected, of course, with a layer of plastic. Now you could get that off with your fingernails, but like I said, my fingernails are horrible, so I'm going to use this little knife again to get this off. It should make things easier for myself. All right. Just only take off half, and then place it on the bottom side of the battery holder and your circuit. Now where to put it? Please put it on the lowest part of the battery holder, because this doesn't need to be sticking out. Nothing needs to be sticking out. It needs to be one flat piece of sticky tape. So I put it in this flat area right here, like so. Yeah. And next up I'm going to, of course, stick it in the lid. Now to get it in exactly the middle of the jar, because that will look the best, you can use these notches here in the lid. And if you line them up like so and so, from here to here, then you know you have to put it right there in the middle, the LED. It doesn't matter where the circuit is, you're hardly going to see that one. You really want the LED to be in the middle. So get yourself a top overview over this when you're positioning it. Take off this piece of tape, protective layer of tape, and now this part is really sticky. As soon as it sticks, it really sticks, so get it right the first time. Have an overview from the top, otherwise it's going to be very hard. I'm going to do the same thing, align it and put it in there. And then really press down on it. Just press down it quite well. It needs to stick to the circuit and to the lid. Stick it, stick it, stick it, stick it, stick it. Yes, I think it's there. Now we can put the jar on it and close the lid. And I think right here we created a working draailampje. Yay! It's a working draailampje, very well. Now if you notice that your light is flickering a lot, that could be your soldering connections. If they're not really good, then they might flicker, or that the little balls in the angle switch are just misaligned. What you do is you give it a shake, and then you see it flicker sometimes, and if you give it a shake again, it's not flickering. So just, you know, play with it. If you turn it around, see, then the light goes off, and it goes on, and then it goes off, and then it goes on. Now this here is a draailampje. You can buy them from me on my website, all pre-prepared. You can get them as a kit, as I just showed you, or you can get your own parts and make one. I also do workshops with kids. It's a lot of fun. You can buy a whole bunch of them from me at all in one go. But please just have fun with technology. This is a simple little project. I took 25 minutes right now. When I'm doing it one on my own, I finish in about like 8 minutes or something. but I wanted to take it easy so you can follow along. Enjoy technology, make things. I love making things, and I hope you do too, and you kind of learn how to solder too. This is a draailampje. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, just please feel free to contact me. Send me an email or find me on the website or on Twitter. Thank you so much, or leave comments here on YouTube, that's fine too, of course. Thank you so much for watching, and go make stuff. Bye.